The flame comes out in a pulse. That is the first thing you need to understand about James Harmon. Not his name, not his rank, not the fact that he is 22 years old and hasn't slept in 31 hours. The first thing you need to understand is that the weapon strapped to his back is not a gun. A gun sends a bullet, clean, distant, merciful in its way. What James Harmon carries, the M2-2 flamethrower, 68 pounds of pressurized napalm mixture and ignition hardware, sends fire. In it coats, it clings. It follows a man into every corner of a space where corners are all he has left. And on this particular ridge on Okinawa, on the morning of May 11th, 1945, the men inside that cave network have a great many corners. They have 7 fortified positions, 4 interconnected tunnels, 3 heavy machine gun nests, and an estimated 80-plus soldiers of the Imperial Japanese 62nd Infantry Division, a unit that had already stopped 3 American assault companies on this exact ground in the past 6 days, killing or wounding 112 U.S. Army soldiers in the process, 80 to 1. Those are the numbers standing between Corporal Harmon and the objective. But that is not the number that will define this morning. Harmon is crawling now flat against the red Okinawan mud, and the twin cylinders of the flamethrower dragging behind him like something ancient and terrible. 20 meters to his left, Private First Class Devereaux is not moving anymore. 12 meters behind him, the rest of his squad has gone silent in a way that means only one thing. The orders that came through the radio 6 minutes ago told him to pull back. He did not pull back. What happened next, in the next 4 hours on that ridge, was witnessed by the men who eventually arrived to relieve him. But the most revealing accounts of what Corporal James Harmon did that morning came from the men who tried to stop him. They had a name for him. They said it to each other in the dark. And after the war, when American interrogators asked Japanese prisoners about the assault on Hill 110-C, about the single American soldier who never stopped advancing, the captured soldiers went quiet in a way that made the interpreters look up from their notebooks. What they said, when they finally spoke, is the reason this story exists. Before we go further, if stories like this one hit different for you, I just launched the Combat Blueprint, a free newsletter with 1 real story per issue, fully sourced, with tactical breakdowns you won't find in any video. The first issue is already live. Link in the description. Takes 10 seconds to join. And now back to Corporal Harmon and what the men who tried to kill him said about him when the war was over. James Patrick Harmon was born in 1923 in Chillicothe, Ohio, a small city pressed between the Scioto River and the low green hills of Ross County, where his father ran a hardware store and his mother taught Sunday school at the First Methodist Church on Paint Street. He was the third of 4 children, yet he played left field on the high school baseball team with the focused mediocrity of a boy who loves the game more than he is talented at it. He worked summers at the hardware store, learning the names of things, the weight of different wrenches which screws stripped under pressure, how different metals behaved in heat. His father later said the boy had a gift for understanding how things worked, not from reading about them but from putting his hands on them. He had red hair, hence the name. Every man in his platoon called him Red from the first week of basic training at Camp Shelby, Mississippi. He enlisted at 18, 4 months after Pearl Harbor, not out of rage or declared patriotism, but because his older brother Tommy had already enlisted, and Red Harmon was not the kind of man who watched someone else carry something he could carry himself. Mind what Sergeant Dale Whitcomb of the 17th Infantry Regiment's 3rd Battalion said in his after-action testimony was this: Harmon never talked about being scared. But he was the only man in the platoon who never looked surprised when things went wrong. Like he expected the worst and just got on with it. He carried two things into every operation that mattered more to him than his dog tags. And the first was a photograph, creased and fog-soft from humidity, of his mother standing in front of the hardware store on a summer afternoon, squinting into the sun. The second was a letter, sealed, addressed to a girl named Dottie Marsh in Chillicothe, Ohio. He had written it the night before his unit shipped out from Leyte. He told his bunkmate, Private Leotis Frazier, that if he didn't come back from Okinawa, Frazier was to mail it. Frazier had asked Red what was in the letter, and Red had said, "A promise I'm planning to keep in person." That letter sat in the breast pocket of his field jacket on May 11, 1945, as he crawled alone toward the most heavily fortified position his regiment had yet encountered on Okinawa. The 7th Infantry Division had been fighting on Okinawa since April 1, 1945. By early May, they were grinding through the Shuri Line, a network of interlocking Japanese defensive positions built into the ridges, hills, and coral stone caves of the island's southern third. Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima's 32nd Army had fortified every approach to every objective with overlapping fields of fire. Artillery, heavy machine guns, knee mortars, snipers in pre-registered positions. Hill 110-C, the specific objective assigned to 3rd Battalion on May 11th, had its own record. The Japanese 62nd Infantry Division had stopped Captain Harold Cray's B Company on May 5th, and they had stopped Lieutenant Voss Patterson's A Company on May 7th. Combined casualties from those two assaults, 112 killed or wounded. The position had not been overrun, had not been weakened in any measurable way. The battalion intelligence officer, First Lieutenant Roy Callahan, noted in his May 8th report that the position appeared to be held by approximately 30 to 40 soldiers covered by a single heavy machine gun nest and 2 light positions, and that assessment was catastrophically wrong. Corporal Harmon's platoon, 22 men under Lieutenant Roy Beckett, crossed the line of departure at 06:30 on May 11th with a plan built entirely on that false estimate. 2 assault squads would suppress the main entrance. 1 squad, including Harmon with the M2-2, would advance under that suppression and burn out the forward positions. Then a rifle squad would clear what remained, and they were 40 meters from the first position when the world showed them what was actually there. The single heavy machine gun opened fire, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, then machine guns from 2 flanking positions that the map didn't show, hadn't shown, couldn't have shown, because they had been dug in the previous night by a Japanese engineering unit that had reinforced the position to nearly 3 times its reported strength. The intelligence said 30 to 40, and there were more than 80. Lieutenant Beckett was hit in the first 30 seconds, his left thigh opened by a burst of 7.7 millimeter fire from a Type 92 heavy machine gun positioned to cover exactly the ground B platoon was crossing. Squad leader Corporal Dutch Vandenberg pulled him behind a limestone outcrop. Harmon went flat behind a dead fold in the ground, the flamethrower cylinders against his spine. He could see the cave entrances now, not the 2 on the map. 5 reinforced apertures, enforced, each one shooting. The radio crackled at 06:48. Pull back, regroup, wait for artillery. Vandenberg shouted it, and the platoon began moving rearward, dragging their wounded. Harmon did not move rearward. He was too deep in. Between his position and the platoon's withdrawal route lay 40 meters of open ground swept by 3 machine gun positions. Ground he would have to cross upright to retreat on, while the position ahead had a blind angle his forward position already exploited. Your retreating meant dying in the open. Advancing might not. He also understood something about flamethrowers that rifles and grenades did not change. Once you brought napalm to a fortified cave position, the men inside knew. You had one window before they adjusted, and if you didn't use it, you lost it. So Corporal James Harmon did not pull back. Flamethrower. Full load, approximately 7 seconds of fire. M1911.45 caliber pistol, 2 magazines, 14 rounds, 2 fragmentation grenades, a 1 smoke grenade, water, half canteen, left shoulder grazed and bleeding. His flamethrower team, Devereaux on igniter check, Harlow on rear security, were gone. 1 U.S. Army corporal, 1 unreduced position, 5 cave entrances, 80 defenders. The mission was still active. He moves low and left. A limestone shelf runs 40 degrees along the base of the ridge. Not on any map, not in any briefing, but real enough to press his body against as he works toward the rightmost cave entrance, in the one with the widest natural blind spot from the machine gun at the center position. The Japanese soldiers inside are professionals. The 62nd Infantry Division had been fighting in China since 1938. These were not scared conscripts. These were men who had held a prepared position against 2 organized American company-level assaults and inflicted over 100 casualties. Their platoon commander, Lieutenant Tatsuya Mizuno, he later identified from captured documents, had supervised the construction of this position over 3 months. His machine gunners knew where the bodies would fall before they fired. They responded to Harmon's approach with the calm efficiency of men who had done this before. The center-heavy machine guns swung to track him. A spotter called adjustments through the connected tunnel system. A Type 99 rifleman at the second entrance began searching the base of the limestone shelf with patient, methodical fire, triangulating from the muzzle flash of Harmon's .45 as he laid down 1 covering shot to his right. At 07:03, the trap snapped shut. Harmon was 10 meters from the rightmost entrance, closer than any American had gotten to this cave complex since the battle began. When the ground behind the limestone shelf erupted. A spider hole. 1 meter wide, covered with a wooden frame packed with soil, invisible from any angle of approach. And it had been positioned to cover exactly the natural approach route that the limestone shelf created. Lieutenant Mizuno had known someone would try it. He had put a 3-man team in that spider hole 4 days ago and told them to wait. The cover blew off. A Japanese soldier came up with a Type 100 submachine gun at a range of 4 meters. 4 meters. 2 more soldiers emerged to Harmon's left at 6 meters, 1 with a rifle, 1 with a Type 97 grenade already fused. This was the kill zone. Harmon was in it. This should have been the end of the story. What happened in the next 4 seconds is documented in Harmon's own words from a post-action interview conducted by the 7th Infantry Division historical officer on June 2nd, 1945. I didn't think. The cylinder valve was already cracked. I just turned left and squeezed. The flamethrower ignited in a burst that filled the spider hole aperture and the 2 meters of ground to its left. Napalm mixture, thickened, adhesive, a burning at over 1,000 degrees Celsius, does not distinguish between soldiers. The 2 men to his left were gone in seconds. The man at 4 meters dove back into the spider hole. Harmon stepped over the opening and kept moving. He was now 8 meters from the cave entrance. Still on his feet. Still carrying 68 pounds on his back. He had used approximately 1.5 seconds of his 7 seconds of fire, and what he had already seen from that position, an angle into the cave entrance that showed the connecting tunnel running left to right, showing him the exact layout that no map had documented. That is what would make everything he did in the next 4 hours make sense. But only if you were the one who had looked into that cave at that exact moment and seen what was inside. He burns the first entrance at 07:06. One burst, 1.5 seconds. Napalm channels into the cave mouth. He follows the oxygen, finds the timber supports of the interior firing position. The machine gun at that entrance goes silent. The voices inside change immediately, from commands, short and clipped, to something louder and less organized. That is the first crack. In the central command position, Lieutenant Mizuno is already on his field telephone. He is asking for a count of American soldiers. The men in the left flank position report 1. The men in the center report 1. And the men who were in the spider hole, the ones who came back, report 1. Mizuno is not a man who loses composure easily. He has been a soldier for 9 years, but the report from 3 separate positions all confirming that one man neutralized the spider hole team and burned the forward entrance and is still advancing. That report does not fit any tactical model he is trained for. How many Americans are there? He asks it twice. The answer is the same. 1. His men have no framework for 1. Harmon works left along the ridge base. 3 micro-battles in the next 40 minutes define what one man with fire and no other options can do. The second cave entrance has a reverse slope position. The Type 92 heavy machine gun can't depress far enough to hit the base of the ridge directly below it. Harmon uses a smoke grenade to mask his final approach. Covers the last 12 meters in a low run that reopens the graze wound on his shoulder, and then burns the entrance from below. The machine gun goes silent. 3 seconds of fire used, 4 seconds remain. The third position, the center entrance, is where everything changes. He is working toward it when he stops. Something is wrong. His instincts. 6 months of Pacific combat, 14 separate engagements, the hardware store kid's gift for understanding how things work when he puts his hands on them. Tell him to stop. Something about the ground, the spacing of the rocks, the way the Okinawan mud has been disturbed in a pattern that nature doesn't make. He stops moving. Then he sees them. 2 children, an old woman, behind a broken limestone wall 15 meters to his right and directly between him and the center cave entrance. An old woman, 60, maybe older, holds a girl of perhaps 6 against her body. A boy, 8 or 9, is pressed flat behind them, and they are looking at Harmon with the absolute stillness of people who understand that any movement will draw fire from the cave above. They have been there for hours, maybe days. Okinawan civilians trapped in the crossfire zone of a fortified position, unable to move without dying. Harmon's assault route goes directly through their position. He stops, lies flat, looks at the cave entrance above them, looks at the 3 faces watching him. The little girl's hands are pressed over her ears. Her eyes are open. This is what it costs him. 12 minutes? 12 minutes crawling in the wrong direction away from the center entrance, drawing machine gun fire from the right flank position to create a window for those 3 people to move low along the ridge base and away from the crossfire zone. He takes a grazing round across his right forearm during those 12 minutes. Not deep, but enough to add to the blood already soaking his sleeve. He watches them reach a shell crater 30 meters behind his position and go flat inside it. Then he turns back toward the center entrance. He does something then that makes no tactical sense to anyone watching. He sets the flamethrower on the ground, detaches it, crawls forward 40 meters without it. His squad sergeant, watching through binoculars from the withdrawal position, later said every man watching believed Harmon had lost his mind. The position was still hot. Going forward without the weapon was suicide. He was gone 4 minutes. Then he crawled back. No one understood why. Not yet. He is behind a limestone outcrop at 0804, 68 pounds on his back again. The right forearm wound has stiffened. The shoulder wound has thickened into a hot ache behind his left collarbone. He has been moving for 94 minutes without water. He has not eaten since 0400 the previous morning. On only the pistol, 2 magazines, and the flamethrower with maybe 3.5 seconds remaining. He leans against the limestone and breathes. He hears Japanese voices from the center entrance. Not the command voices of before, the clipped professional tones of Lieutenant Mizuno directing a defense. These are different, faster, overlapping. He doesn't know the words, but he knows the sound. Men whose trained responses are no longer matching what is actually happening to them. And he hears Devereaux's voice too. Not out loud, in his head the way dead men speak when a living man is near his limit. Devereaux saying his name. Flat Ohio vowels read, like a flat stone dropped in still water. His hands won't stay still. He presses them flat against the wet Okinawan stone to make them stop. He thinks about the retreat order, about Dutch Vandenberg pulling the whole platoon rearward in good order, doing the right thing, the logical thing. He could stop. He has already done more than anyone expected. 2 positions cleared, the ambush team neutralized, 3 civilians out of the fire. He reaches into his breast pocket with one blood-sticky hand and takes out the letter. He doesn't read it. He knows what it says. He has said those words in his head so many times they have worn smooth like river stones. A hardware store in Chillicothe, and a girl named Dottie who is probably starting her Tuesday morning completely unaware that the person she is waiting for is sitting against a rock deciding whether to get up one more time. He puts the letter back. He gets up one more time. The irrational thing he had done, leaving the flamethrower, crawling forward without it, becomes rational the moment you understand what he had seen. At cave entrance 1, he saw the tunnel's interior bracing in the direction of the air draft. A hardware store instinct. Center entrance was uphill. Oxygen rises, napalm follows oxygen. From below, looking up, the flame would ignite at the mouth, but the tunnel's draw would only pull it inward for 2 seconds. 2 seconds against 4 connected positions. From above, the draft would carry fire down, inward through the connecting system to every position it served. He crawled forward without the weapon to find the route above the entrance. Found it. A fissure in the ridge face. 3 meters above the cave mouth under the blind angle of the right flank gun. It would hold a man and the weapon. He went back for the weapon. Now he moves up. 14 meters. 12. The right flank machine gun swings toward him and he is already inside its depression limit, moving against the ridge face, climbing. His right arm screams. He uses it anyway. 9 meters. 6. Inside the cave complex, Sergeant Kenji Watanabe, second in command of the forward position, a career soldier who had fought at Shanghai and Wuhan, is trying to explain to his men what is happening. 5 men with him at the center tunnel junction. 2 positions lost. Spider whole team silent for an hour. Machine gun at entrance 2. Gone. "Where is he?" one of his soldiers asks, not in the professional tone of a man requesting tactical information, in the voice of a man who has lost the thread. Watanabe cannot answer, and their entire defensive doctrine had assumed a coordinated American attack. Suppressing fire, multiple advances, the weight of an organized unit. It had no section for one man who moved like water and appeared from angles their preparation had sealed. At the right flank position, the machine gunner reports he cannot find the American. The American has disappeared. Harmon wedges himself into the fissure. He is directly above the center aperture. He can hear voices below him. He tilts the flamethrower nozzle down into the cave mouth. He pulls the trigger. 3.5 seconds of fire, downward. The oxygen draft catches it and pulls it into the connecting tunnel in a rolling wave. What happens inside a tunnel system when napalm mixture fire rolls through it does not require elaboration. He moves. Fired. Dropped to the left. Moved again. The right flank position detonates. Secondary explosion, ammunition cooked off by the heat moving through the tunnel system. At 30 meters, 20. He's down the ridge now, moving left toward the right flank entrance with the M1911 out, 2 rounds in the chamber, the flamethrower empty and still on his back. The right flank entrance opens and 2 soldiers come out. Not in a fighting rush, not in a tactical withdrawal. They come out in the way that men emerge from a space that has become incompatible with survival. Harmon secures them. He approaches the 2 remaining entrances and from 20 meters shouts the Japanese he has learned, "Yame, tewo agero." Stop. Hands up. Silence. Then the voices from inside say something back. He finds out later from the interpreter. They are asking how many Americans are outside. The answer is 1. A longer silence. Then they come out. In the shell crater behind his position, the old Okinawan woman raises her head and watches a single American soldier with an empty flamethrower on his back and blood on both arms stand before 5 surrendered Japanese soldiers on a ridge that had held for 6 days. She nods once, like a person acknowledging a fact. 1 beat of silence on Hill 110-C. Nothing but the Pacific wind and the distant percussion of the war moving south. And the first soldiers from B Company reached Hill 110-C at 11:04. Redirected after artillery coordination failed and Battalion re-established communication with Harmon's last known position. What they found required them to radio the battalion commander before they could file a report. 7 enemy soldiers dead from flamethrower burns and secondary explosions. 5 prisoners sitting in a row under guard, Harmon's guard using his sidearm. 3 civilians alive in a shell crater. One U.S. Army corporal with a grazed left shoulder. A through and through on his right forearm, advanced dehydration, and a letter in his breast pocket that he handed to the first medic who reached him, asking him to hold it until he was sure he wasn't going to need it. The medic held it. Harmon didn't need it. Captain Willard Ennis, commanding officer of B Company, 17th Infantry Regiment, he wrote in his after-action report, Corporal Harmon's single-handed reduction of a reinforced Japanese defensive position, a position that had repelled 2 previous company-level assaults with combined casualties of 112 KIA and WIA, represents the most remarkable individual act of arms I personally witnessed during the Okinawa campaign. Its reduction opened the left flank of the 3rd Battalion advance in a way that Corps-level artillery had failed to accomplish in 6 days of engagement. The 5 prisoners were processed through the 7th Infantry Division POW holding facility and interviewed by ATIS, the Allied translator and interpreter section. First Lieutenant Gordon Matsuda conducted the first interview with Sergeant Kenji Watanabe on May 14th. His notes record the exchange. The interrogating officer Matsuda, he asked Watanabe how many American soldiers had attacked the position. Watanabe was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Hitori, 1. Matsuda asked if he was certain. Watanabe was quiet. Then he said in a voice that Matsuda described as entirely without defensiveness, as if recounting a fact of physics, that yes, one man who approached from an angle their plan had explicitly eliminated, who survived a three-man close-range ambush, who used a position above the primary entrance that none of his soldiers, men with months at that exact location, had ever identified as viable. We prepared for an American assault, Watanabe said. We prepared carefully. We had prepared for every kind of American assault. We had not prepared for that man. A second prisoner, Private Ichiro Kato, 19 years old, from Kagoshima Prefecture, in a rice farmer before conscription, gave what Matsuda's notes describe as the most direct expression of enemy psychological state recorded during the Okinawa campaign interrogations. Kato said, "When the fire came from above, we knew what we had done wrong. We had been watching the ground. He had gone over us." Then Kato said the words the interpreter paused before translating. "Hono no oni wa ue kara kuru." The fire demon comes from above. That was what they had called him in the tunnel. In those last minutes when the fire moved through the connecting passage and positions went silent one by one, the soldiers around Kato had said it to each other. Hono no oni. The fire demon. Not because they believed in demons. Because they had no other word for something that came from where their preparation said nothing could come. That survived what should have been unsurvivable, that did not stop. Watanabe spoke about him once more, in a post-war interview in 1965 with a historian documenting Okinawa survivor accounts. "I do not say this to diminish what we did," Watanabe said. "The position was correct. The preparation was correct. We had held against 2 attacks. And then one man came, and our preparation meant nothing. There are soldiers who are different. You do not know they are different until they have already done the thing that was impossible. And that American was different." Then the civilian spoke. Uto Shimabukuro, 63 years old, of Naha District, the old woman from the shell crater, was interviewed by an Army civil affairs officer in June 1945. She was asked what she wanted to say about the American soldier who had moved her family out of the crossfire zone during his assault. She said, "He was bleeding. He could see that I could see he was bleeding. He didn't stop." A pause. He didn't stop. Corporal James Harmon was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration of the United States Army, for his actions on Hill 110-C on May 11, 1945. The citation, signed by Major General Archibald Arnold, commanding general of the 7th Infantry Division, reads in part, "Corporal Harmon, without orders and against direct instruction to withdraw, advanced alone toward a heavily fortified enemy position that had resisted 2 previous organized company-level assaults. Acting without support, communications, or adequate ammunition, Corporal Harmon neutralized or reduced 4 of 7 enemy defensive positions, captured 5 enemy soldiers, and secured the objective, thereby opening the left flank of the 3rd Battalion advance and enabling the resumption of the regimental assault on the Shuri line. His conduct reflects the highest traditions of the military service and the United States Army." He came home to Chillicothe in the fall of 1945. He went back to work in his father's hardware store. He did not give speeches. He worked. He learned the weight of different wrenches. He watched which metals behaved in heat. He mailed the letter to Dottie Marsh 2 days after he got home. She said she had been waiting long enough and married him the following spring, and he never directly told anyone what he had done on that ridge. What he said once to his son James Jr. when the boy was old enough to ask was, "I was just the last man still there. Sometimes that's enough." He did not learn about the nickname Hono no Oni until 1965, when a historian shared the ATIS interrogation records with him. His daughter said he read those documents for a long time without speaking, and then he set them down on the kitchen table and said, "They were good soldiers." That was all. His actions that morning contributed to the reduction of the Shuri Line's left flank, enabling the 7th Infantry Division and 96th Infantry Division to finally breach the Shuri defenses by late May, driving the Japanese 32nd Army to its final defensive position at Mabuni. The Battle of Okinawa ended June 22, 1945. The American planners had projected U.S. casualties of 250,000 to 1 million men for the planned invasion of the Japanese home islands. That invasion never came. The mathematics of what one corporal did on one ridge ripple outward in ways no citation has ever fully calculated. He had wrong intelligence. He had orders to withdraw. He had an ambush waiting for him at the one angle his approach had to take. And in the middle of trying to do an impossible thing, he stopped, because there was a child pressing her hands over her ears. None of that is in the citation. Citations describe actions. They don't describe 4 seconds in which a man decides to take on a 3-man close-range ambush with a weapon built for 40 meters. They don't describe 12 minutes moving in the wrong direction so an old woman and 2 children could reach a shell crater. They don't describe hands pressed flat against limestone to make them stop shaking. And the enemy said, "We had not prepared for that man. He was not superhuman. He bled. He ran out of water. He heard dead men talking. He was human in every particular." And he got up anyway. For the veterans watching this, you know what that rock feels like. You know that the decision to get up one more time is made not in heroism, but at the exhausted bottom of a human being's endurance. For those who have never carried that weight, this is what it costs. Not in the citation, and in the hands that won't stop shaking, and the letter in the breast pocket, and the promise you intend to keep in person. The enemy gave him a name, Hono no Oni, the fire demon. He didn't call himself that. He called himself Red. He married Dottie Marsh in the spring of 1946. He kept the promise, and the last letter he wrote that mattered, sent in 1947 to the family of Private First Class Devereaux, said, "He was a good soldier and he was my friend, and I wanted you to know that he was doing his job exactly right when he was killed. I think about him." That's who the fire demon was. A man from Ohio who thought about his friends and kept his promises and pressed his hands flat against the rock when they shook. And when the men who tried hardest to stop him were asked what they remembered, and they said, "We had not prepared for that man." The truest measure of what a man was on a battlefield is not what his own side says about him. It's what his enemies say when they have no reason left to say anything but the truth. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss these forgotten stories of extraordinary American courage. Who should we tell next? Drop their name in the comments.